Thank you for joining me for day 9 of the 12 Days of Christmas series. Today I'm going to be using some products from So Suzy Stamps to create an elf-themed card. So I've got these two 6x6 patterned papers that I'm going to be using, and I'm going to die cut some tags using some nested tag dies from the cream coloured cardstock that's got the text on it. So I'm just adding these circles here to make like a hole reinforcement and holding that down with some washi tape. So then from the snowflake pattern cardstock, I'm just cutting that down to slightly shorter than 4¼ inches by 5½. So this means that when I place that on top of my A2 size top folding note card, there'll just be a small edge of the khaki cardstock showing underneath. So now that I've run this through my die cutting machine, I'm just popping out those pieces, and I'm going to reuse the smallest circle to punch a hole at the top in the centre of each of those tags by just taping that down again and running it through my die cutting machine. So once I've cut that out of both the small and the large tag, I'm just going to go ahead and do some stamping on the smallest tag. So the stamps that I'm using today are from So Suzy Stamps, and I'll have a link below to show where you can purchase those from. So I've just used my anti-static powder tool to remove any kind of oily residue on the cardstock, as I'm going to be heat embossing both the sentiment and the elf shoes, and I don't want any of that embossing powder to stick to the cardstock, kind of where there might be oil from my fingers or some static cling. So I'm just stamping both of those down using Versamark, which is just a clear sticky ink. Any ink that takes a while to dry will work well with embossing powder. You just need something to kind of stick and grab that powder as you pour it on. So I'm just going to colour in, you can't really see it there, but there are some kind of jingle bells along this design, and I want those to be coloured in with the embossing powder as well. So I'm just using an Emboss It pen by Ranger. This is the same ink, the same kind of embossing ink that's in those ink pads, and I'm just applying some small dots over each of those jingle bells so the embossing powder will stick down there and colour those in. Okay, so the embossing powder that I'm using is by Ranger. This is the Liquid Platinum. I think it's been a really popular colour over Christmas. It's a really nice kind of Christmassy gold colour. So I'm just melting that in place with my heat tool. And then I'm going to move on to some ink blending. I'm just going to apply some ink around the edges of the tag to give it a little bit more dimension and interest. And I'm using the Distress inks in Antique Linen for the tag, and then I'm going to use the Tumbled Glass Distress ink for the blue snowflake panel. So I'm just applying that with a mini ink blending tool. You could just rub the cardstock directly against the ink pad, but I think you get a nicer look if you take the time to use the mini ink blending tool. So I'm just colouring in the elf shoes using my Spectrum Noir alcohol ink markers, using LG5 as my darkest colour and blending that out with LG3. For my blues, I'm using TB1 and alternating the stripes with TB3. I then wanted to add some yellow to the cuffs of the shoes, and I just added that in with CT2. So now I'm going to glue the tag together. I'm going to apply the smaller tag directly on top of the larger tag. This is completely optional. You could have just used one tag, but I think it's nice to have that added extra interest and dimension of having the kind of nested die cuts layered on top of each other. And I think it adds something really nice to this quite simple card. So I'm just going to add in the hole reinforcement there using a quick stick glue pen. I'm just going to place that down, and I realised as I was doing this that I hadn't ink blended around the edges, so I just carefully peeled that up and held it with my tweezers while I added some of that Antique Linen Distress ink over the top. And I left that in because I think it shows just how different the cardstock looks once it's got the added ink blending around the edges. I think it's really nice to just define those edges a little bit. Okay, so that is the tag all put together, and now I'm going to put it onto the card base. So first of all, I'm going to stick down the blue panel that we cut earlier. As I say, this is just slightly smaller. I think it was 1/8 of an inch smaller in width and height. So it's leaving a border of 1/16 of an inch just around the outside edge of this A2 size top folding note card. Once that's pressed down in place, I'm going to go ahead and add some twine. This is a hemp cord that has some gold thread wound through it, so again I think that's really nice. It kind of matches the embossing powder. I decided to add some jingle bells onto the tag tie as well. I can't remember where I got these jingle bells from. I've had these since last year, or possibly even the year before, when I needed some jingle bells to add to a Christmas jumper. I think I maybe picked them up from Paper Jace, but you can get these quite easily from most local craft supply stores. So once that is all threaded through, I'm just going to tie a knot to hold that in place. And then I'm going to go ahead and add some 3D foam tape to the back of the tag. So this is the Scotch 3M foam tape. It's a really nice foam tape. It comes in super huge rolls, so it's quite expensive when you buy it. I've only just recently bought a roll, and I imagine it will last me quite a long time because it is huge. You can just see a little bit of it there down in the bottom right hand corner. But the nice thing about this tape is that you don't need scissors, you can just rip it straight off the roll. So I'll go ahead and peel the backing off this tape, and then I'll stick that down to the front of the card panel. So if you've been following the 12 Days of Christmas series on my blog, you'll know that this is the second post that I've done for So Suzy Stamps. I was fortunate enough to be able to do 3 guest designer posts, so my final one will be a week today, so it will be next Sunday, and I've really enjoyed the opportunity to work with them. They have some really great stamps available on their website and really inexpensive shipping to the UK, and it's also really quick. So if you are looking to shop with them, as I say, I'll include a link below. So I just used my multimedia mat to stick down the twine, and then I'm finishing off the front of this card with some clear sequins from Pretty Pink Posh, and I'm using some Zot Bling glue dots to hold those down. The sequin sizes are the 10mm, 6 and 4mm sizes. So once I had that all in place, I thought that I needed just something extra around the top of the card, so I took some more of that hemp cord that's got the gold twisted through, and I wrapped that 3 times around the front of my card and tied that in a knot, and I just made sure that the knot was to the side of the card so it didn't interrupt the design at the front or on the inside when you open that card up. So there you have it, today's card is all finished. I've got the jingle bells jingling away on the front, and I just decided to neaten up that twine at the side there. So thank you so much for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed this post. If you haven't yet caught up on the rest of the 12 Days of Christmas, I'll make sure to have a link to the playlist. And if you've enjoyed this video, please do hit the like button, leave a comment below, or subscribe. I'll see you again on Tuesday for day 10. Goodbye for now.